Hi, in preparation for doing a review of some dark sweet cherries in heavy cane sugar syrup, I thought, well, how much fructose is there in cane sugar versus high fructose corn syrup versus corn syrup? Well, I didn't immediately find information on corn syrup. However, for high fructose corn syrup, I discovered that high fructose corn syrup has 42 to 53% fructose in it. And I thought, oh, wow, that is actually about the same as things like cane sugar, invert sugar, molasses, agave, honey, and several others. So, what's the difference between high fructose corn syrup and eating things like that? Well, in effect, there isn't a difference because they have about the same amount of fructose in them. In fact, when I looked for cane sugar, it specifically said about 50%. So there is a range, not just for corn syrups, but also for other kinds of sugar that have lots of fructose. Now, if you eat huge quantities of cinnamon, it is also 50% fructose, 50% glucose. What does this mean? Well, glucose is the one that is associated with diabetes and increased risk of heart disease. Fructose, in contrast, is associated with damage to the liver because it converts the sugar it can't use immediately into one of two things. Either into glycogen, which is the same thing that glucose is converted into. So that's adding to the sugar load in your bloodstream. Or it gets stored in the liver as fat. Not good, because fatty liver is a precursor to cirrhosis of the liver. Cirrhosis of the liver is where your liver is damaged, and either, if it's still possible, they can cut off the part that's decayed, and the rest of the liver will grow back. You can lose 2/3 of your liver, I believe, and it'll grow back. But if it's too damaged, you'll need a liver transplant. Like if you get hepatitis destroys your liver. There's no way to just regrow it. It's gone. You have to get a new one. But fructose, fortunately, doesn't work that way. So what do? Well, if you are insisting on using sugar products for whatever reason, you should be avoiding cane sugar, honey, agave, invert sugar, molasses, high fructose corn syrup, and a lot of other natural sugars, because they're not going to be good for you. Unfortunately, that's a problem because the vast majority of, say, for example, sodas are made with either high fructose corn syrup, like Coke and Pepsi both use that, or they are made with cane sugar. And it really boils down to almost exactly the same thing. You're poisoning your body. Number one, sugar is highly addictive, more addictive than cocaine is. Number two, these sugars are doing damage to your body in multiple ways, and as well as the addiction. So, what should you do then? Well, you should reduce. And if you're addicted, this is gonna be hard. So there are two levels of addiction. There's like an official, like you're a food addict. And in that case, you need to explore things like morphine blockers with your doctor, because some people who have food addiction can be helped to get off of junk food and fast food and such by getting onto morphine blockers. They'll be able to get into a normal way of eating, and maybe you'll have to reset your gut biome, maybe even have a fecal transplant, and so on and so forth. The alternative is look into artificial and alternative sweeteners. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.
So to add to that, there was a study done, and it was a comparative study. This was published in PubMed on the National Institutes of Health's website, NCBI, NLM, NIH.gov. And the study was called, let's see, Synergistic Effects of Fructose and Glucose on Lipoprotein Risk Factors for Cardiovascular Disease in Young Adults. So, in simple terms, they compared fructose, glucose, high fructose corn syrup, and aspartame, and discovered how each of those affected the participants. And this was back in 2021, I believe. No, 2020. And there was a correction made in 2021. All right, so I'm going to read the background. Fructose consumption increases risk factors for cardiometabolic disease. Cardio, the heart, metabolism is our ability to process food and beverages and extract energy, vitamins, and minerals, and so on from them. It is assumed that the effects of free sugars on risk factors are less potent because they contain less fructose. We compared the effects of consuming fructose, glucose, or their combination, high fructose corn syrup, on cardiometabolic risk factors. And the participants were ages 18 to 40 years old. Body mass index, which we now has been admitted by the scientific community as being rubbish by itself, between 18 and 35 kilograms per meter square. Okay. They participated in a parallel, double-blinded dietary intervention during which beverages sweetened with aspartame, glucose, 25% of energy requirements, fructose, or high fructose corn syrup, 25% and 17.5%, respectively, for the energy requirement, were consumed for 2 weeks. So this is a short-term study. Groups were matched for sex, baseline BMI, and plasma lipid / lipoprotein concentrations. Now, lipo or lipid, that means fat. 24-hour serial blood samples were collected at baseline and after the intervention. Primary outcomes were 24-hour, which means they're tracking these things. 24-hour triglyceride, AUC, I'm not sure what the AUC part means, LDL cholesterol, C, and apolipoprotein, or ApoB for short. Interactions between fructose and glucose were assessed post hoc, post meaning after. So there were 145 subjects. So again, this is a short-term, fairly small study, but we're talking about 145 subjects that completed the study. So there were others that dropped out for whatever reason or were asked to stop because of health concerns, maybe. 26 plus or minus 5.8 years, body mass index 25 plus or minus 3.7 kilograms per meter square. And as expected, the increase of 24-hour triglycerides compared with aspartame was highest during fructose consumption. So that's one of the consequences of consuming pure fructose in its unconstrained or form, which is to say, not within fruit. It was intermediate. The triglycerides were intermediate during high fructose corn syrup consumption. So we're talking about, with the fructose, it was 6.66 mmol per liter, and it was 4.68 mmol per liter for the high fructose corn syrup. and it was lowest during glucose consumption. Doesn't say what the amount was, though. In contrast, the increase of LDL-C was highest during HFCS consumption. Now, LDL-C and triglycerides both have a role in cardiovascular problems, or CVD, cardiovascular disease, CVD. So, the increase of LDL was highest during high fructose corn syrup consumption, 0.46 mmol per liter, and intermediate during fructose consumption, 0.33 millimeters per liter, mmol per liter, as was the increase of ApoB. For high fructose corn syrup, it was 0.108 grams per liter. For fructose, it was 0.072 grams per liter. And so the post hoc analyses showed significant interactive effects of fructose and glucose on LDL-C and ApoB, but not on 24-hour triglyceride. Now, ApoB is a very important marker, just like LDL-Cs, which are the LDLs that are most associated with heart disease, and triglycerides are also an important marker. So the conclusion is a significant interaction between fructose and glucose, which is through the high fructose corn syrup, and that would also apply to most other sugars, because most other sugars have a combination of fructose and glucose in them, except for pure fructose or pure glucose. Okay, so significant interaction. Significant is different from what it means in normal English. Significant isn't like a large thing, but there was a significant interaction which contributed to increases of lipoprotein risk factors when the two monosaccharides, which are fructose and glucose, are monosaccharides, and sucrose is the other one, were co-ingested as high fructose corn syrup. Thus, the effects of high fructose corn syrup on lipoprotein risk factors are not solely mediated by the fructose content, and it cannot be assumed that glucose is a benign component of high fructose corn syrup. Our findings suggest that high fructose corn syrup may be as harmful as isocaloric amounts of pure fructose and provide further support for the urgency to implement strategies to limit free sugar consumption, which is to say that if you are consuming fructose, or you're consuming high fructose corn syrup, or you're consuming cane sugar, or honey, or invert sugar, or agave, or molasses, and a bunch of others, you're getting both fructose and glucose, somewhere in the range of 40 to 50% fructose. And that's not good. So unless you have a genetic predisposition to not having problems with large amounts of sugar, which is not a lot of people, you might get diabetes if that runs in your family. But if that doesn't run in your family, you might have other kinds of problems. You can get all kinds of metabolic disorders from overconsumption of sugar, of fructose, of glucose, of sucrose. Not sucralose, not aspartame. Sweeteners, the artificial sweeteners and the sweetener substitutes in general are very safe. So, but I'm talking about sugar. So I just wanted you to be aware of this and keep this in mind. If you want to reduce your sugar intake and you want something less sweet, go with erythritol, which is the safest of the sugar alcohols for human consumption, although some people do have problems. There's a minority of people who have problems with it. So if you notice that you're having problems, then you should consult a doctor. The other one is sucralose. Sucralose, also for a minority of people, causes problems. Again, see your doctor if you think you're having problems with the sucralose. Sucralose is very, very, very sweet, and if you take more than a tiny amount, it's also bitter. So I use a tiny scoop that's smaller in terms of like if you imagine my fingernail and you imagine half that size for the size of the little cup that I use, and I only usually fill it halfway if I'm doing like a 2-cup personal smoothie. It's that strong. You can also use stevia and monk's fruit or luohan guo. That's the Chinese name for monk fruit. Those are excellent also to be used for a sweetener. But be careful, because a lot of companies put in dextrin and maltodextrin and other things that are going to spike your blood sugar. Okay, so that's it. I'm done. Just wanted to make sure you understood all this stuff. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you can, comment. It would really help me out. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Hi. Thank you for watching my video. And I hate doing this, but things have gotten pretty sketchy with my employer. And without going into all the details, which I have covered at other times, at least in part, I need some financial assistance. If you have the opportunity to do so, that's great. If you don't, even if you can just put in a word of support in the comments, that helps. To have even just that is good. But financially, I need to be able to carry on doing what I'm doing with these channels. Not so much this channel, not so much the Eclectician channel, which is mostly just me learning about stuff and sharing it with you, but with my Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, where most of what you see that I review, I've purchased myself, or I've gotten at a food pantry, or somebody gave to me because they know I do reviews. But I have invested huge amounts of money in it. And at this point, with a little over 1,800 viewers, I'm earning maybe $125 a month, which doesn't cover the cost of what I've done, let alone the ongoing cost. And then even worse than that is my third channel that's the PC Expert Amateur, which I have invested a large sum of money that I should have been saving for my retirement, because I wanted to be able to present a lot of information about fans and air coolers and water coolers for computers and other things as well. And in order to do that, I had two choices. I either had to make deals with manufacturers and sell my soul, or stick to my ethics and pay for things myself in order to not be beholden to somebody and not feel like, oh, I owe them. So yeah, it's pretty costly. And with the situation with my employer, Amazon, in which the workers' compensation company Sedgwick refuses to fix my shoulder, which was injured at work over a period of months last year, because Amazon's management refused to abide by their own policies to provide me support. I may end up having to pay for the surgery myself with the help of my insurance, and that will still be very expensive. And then I would be out of work for at least a month. So switching to another job, it would be hard, because if I come to you and I say, hey, I want to work for you, and you're like really interested in me, and then I say, oh, by the way, in the near future, I'm going to be having a shoulder replacement, so I will probably be out of work for a month. You're probably going to say, I'll pass, thanks, though. Which would actually be illegal, and you won't tell me that's why you're not choosing me. But, you know, it is a problem, especially with me being as old as I am. I'm almost 58. So if you could please, if you can either go to the my YouTube channel, Glenn's Fast Reviews, and you can make any kind of a donation on there, any size, any time you want, through that, because that's my monetized channel. Or you can go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Glenn M-I-I. That's GLENNMII. and you can make a recurring donation. The smallest one I have on there right now is $10. If that's too big for you to give on a monthly basis, let me know. I can always add a smaller one than that. You know, I just need to know. But again, if you are financially strapped, please don't send me money. I don't want somebody else getting into trouble financially just to help me. That would weigh very heavily on my conscience. So, thanks again for watching this video, and let's make the world a better place.